Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Gospel Guitar Lesson Part 4. Thanks for coming back and checking out the lesson. Today's lesson we're going to be covering some smaller chord fragment ideas, and they're really nice because they're small enough that they're fairly easy to master pretty quickly. You can add some really nice color, some color tones and extensions to them really easily. They're great for sliding in and out of, and they also are really nice for covering a lot of fretboard territory and kind of blurring the lines between like your solo playing and your chordal playing. So we're going to be taking a look today at just two-note chords. Technically 2 notes isn't a chord, but for the purpose of today's lesson it's just going to be easier if we think of them as a chord instead of just like an interval. So yeah, I'm not going to be covering like minor major seconds, minor major thirds, like all possible intervals. I'm just going to be covering the basic chordal intervals and then showing you guys some color tones around those intervals that you can work with and add some really cool sounds with. So at any rate, we're going to be taking a look at adjacent strings and then a skip string. So those are where our intervals are going to be on. We could do like 2 skip strings or 3, but that's just going to get to be a little too much for time's sake. So at any rate, let's get right into it. So first of all, and these are going to be pretty basic sounding chords at first, but as we continue on adding some more color into them, adding some slides and stuff, they sound really cool really fast. So it's worth kind of going through, learning the real basic sounds, getting them down well, and then even if it's kind of a boring sound, rest assured we'll get some really nice ideas out of these pretty quickly. So let's cover just ideas on adjacent strings for right now, okay? So just the basic triad. So here's the first idea. At the 5th fret, bar with the pointer on the G and B strings. And this is all going to be as a C major chord. And right there we're going to get the root and then the 3rd. Okay, next up we're going to be doing the 3rd and then the 5th. Okay, and that is going to be on, again, the G and the B string. These are all going to be on the G and the B string. Okay, this is going to be middle and pointer at the 9th and then the 8th fret. And that is the 3rd and the 5th. And then the 5th and the root is going to be at the 12th of the G, 13th of the B, middle on the G, or excuse me, pointer on the G, middle on the B. Okay, so there's all the inversions. Okay. So now obviously, for the first shape, the root is the lowest note we hear in the chord. So right here it's C. If we need it as a B flat, we could put it right here obviously on this B flat note or an F. Right there on the F note. So second shape doesn't actually have a root in it. So you have to think the first note is the 3rd. So whatever chord you're wanting to play, just think of the 3rd. So for instance, if you want to play like an F chord, just think of the 3rd of F, which is an A. Okay, so it's going to be right there. So it doesn't actually have a root in it, so it can be a little tricky, but just think the first note you hear is the 3rd. And lastly, this one, the root is just the highest note you hear. And you can use whatever fingers you want for these chords as well. The fingerings I use is just kind of, whatever shape is coming next I'm going to be sliding into, that's the way I'll finger the first one, for simplicity. So like right here, if I was going to be adding like the 5th end, I'd finger it like this. If I was going to be adding the 2nd end though, I'd finger it with my ring and my pinky. It's all based on what's coming next, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so there's on adjacent strings. Now with the skip string, first of all we have the, let's see, first of all we're going to have the root and the 5th. So these are all going to be on the G and then the high E string. So we're going to have root and then the 5th. On the 5th fret of the G, 3rd fret of the high E, and that's going to be ring and pointer. Okay, then next up we're going to have the 3rd and then the root, again on the G and the high E strings, and that's going to be 9th fret, and then 8th fret. Okay? And then next up we're going to have the 5th and then the 3rd on the 12th fret, middle and then ring, and that's going to be on the G and the high E string again. Okay, and again this one doesn't have a root, so think of the 3rd as being on the high E. So if we wanted like E, F, here's a 3rd of F, which is A, G, 3rd of G, which is B. Okay, so yeah, there's those shapes. Now, next up, let's take a look at these, how we play these like on other sets of strings, because the shape changes just slightly due to the tuning of the guitar. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so playing these shapes on other sets of strings, when we have the notes on the adjacent strings, okay? Whenever we're not playing on the G and the B strings, whatever note was on the B string, just move it down by 1 fret, okay? So this shape right here, the root in the 3rd, let's just keep it as C. So here's another C note, 10th fret of the D. Whatever note was on the B string, just move it down 1 fret. Our fingering's obviously going to change to match that. So now I'm going to have ring in the middle. Okay, next shape, the 3rd and the 5th. Okay, again up here, whatever note was on the B string, move it down by 1 fret. Okay, and that goes for every single set of strings besides the G and the B. Okay, okay, and then now for our skip string, basically on the G and the high E. Again, here is our first starting shape. It's going to be the same on the D and the B. Okay, but now for the A and the G, we're just going to move whatever note was on the B string down by 1 fret. Okay, so basically same thing we did last time. Okay, and then the same thing goes for the E and then the D strings. So whatever note was on the B string, move it down by 1 fret, and you'll be good to go. Alright, so now that we've got all these shapes down, what can we do with them to make them sound, you know, obviously give them a better sound and make them sound cooler, you know, give some cool slides and stuff? Well, first of all, we can just learn how to slide in between them using scale notes to connect. Okay, so what I mean by that is, first of all, we could go like with our pointer finger barred, we could do a slide using this D note to connect to shape 2. Okay, or I could even do this, use my middle finger to do that slide, or a hammer on the slide, excuse me. Okay. Okay, so then I went to second shape, third shape, and then the next shape from the skip string. Okay, so you know, some really cool idea just right there. And obviously, if you want to transition to like the F chord, you could do that as well. So you know, and then let's transition to the F now. Okay. And then resolve to the C. Okay. So again, I'm not going to be able to walk you guys through all those examples. Hopefully it's kind of clear what I was doing, you know, what shapes I was actually using, and it'll become more clear as you get more comfortable with these shapes. So at any rate, so that's a couple ideas. Just connect some of these shapes together with scale tones, you know, like I was doing there, adding the second. Or I could add the 6th right here above the pointer note. Okay, and you get a cool sound that way as well. So lots of different ideas. Something to keep in mind, the second, which is always a nice note to add in, is 2 frets below the 3rd, 2 frets above the root. So wherever the 3rd of the root is, you can do this. So right here, the 3rd, 2 frets below on the B string. I'm going to change the fingering slightly. Same thing. first shape we learned, 2 frets above the root. Okay, here's the second shape we had worked on, 2 frets below the third. Okay, third shape we had worked on. Okay, so, and then the skip string. First shape I don't really do that with because, you know, you can, it makes for a little bit of an awkward stretch. Okay, here's the second shape, again 2 frets above the root. 2 frets below the third. Okay. Okay, and then there I was just kind of going from C to F. So that's kind of one of the ideas, you know, that I'll use a lot is going to the second there. Oops. Okay, so there's that idea. You know, wherever the fifth is in these chords, you have the sixth, 2 frets above it. This one obviously doesn't have a fifth, so I won't do that. So lots of really cool ideas there to mess around with. And then wherever the third is, we'll have the fourth 1 fret above it. So if we want like a suspended sound. Okay, and then wherever the root is, the seventh, major seventh will be 1 fret below it. Root is not in this shape, so obviously we can't do that. Here's the root. 1 fret below it is going to be our major seventh. Same with the skip string. And this one doesn't have a root, so we can't do that with it. Okay, so that's just using like a standard major triad, and we're gonna, you know, stop there just for time's sake. And then next week we'll take a look at the minor triads, and if we have time in that lesson, go into like 3-note forms. But anyways, you know, hopefully you can see how much, you know, how much ground we can cover with just a simple idea, just moving some of the notes around. It's really endless, and this is just 2 notes on adjacent and then a skip string. If you spend enough time with this, you know, you really learn like how these are going to resolve. So like for instance, if we're going C, first shape, adjacent strings, C, C, F, F. You know, you can hear how that's going to resolve. Let's say we're going to G. You know, without really learning a lot of theory behind it, you start to hear really quickly like where these notes want to pull to as you're playing around with the progressions. Same with the skip string. You know, and it's really cool. And yes, it is kind of some elementary sounds, but once you add the slides, the color tones, the extensions in, it becomes really cool. And there's nothing wrong with playing simple things to kind of get used to the sounds of, you know, where these want to resolve to, the tones, and it, you know, it'll do nothing but help out your larger chord playing as well. And also if you want to use these over a minor chord, just think of the minor chord that's going to be a 6th up. So if you wanted to use like this C major over a minor chord, you could just count up 6, C, D, E, F, G, A, and you could use this over A minor. so you could use it over an A minor. So whatever, one of these you're playing as the major triad, just count up 6 and you can play over that minor chord as well. So it's the relative major minor idea. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. With these, it gets a lot more in depth, obviously, as you're taking it through different progressions and all that good stuff, but it's well worth exploring and checking out. So yeah, hopefully that makes good sense. Hopefully it helps out your playing, gives you guys some fresh ideas and inspiration, and I'll see you guys back here next week for the minor shapes, and also hopefully some three note shapes, or the triads, so the full triad. So anyways, yeah, thanks so much for checking out the lesson, and I'll see you guys soon.